In this video we are going to discuss about the greater omentum. So actually what is greater omentum? For example, think this is a stomach. Okay, so actually from the stomach, especially this is a greater curvature of the stomach and this is a lesser curvature of the stomach, right? So from the greater curvature of stomach, there comes one peritoneal layer which is looking like it's hanging from this greater curvature of stomach, and this is called as our greater omentum. So actually this greater omentum is made up of two layers of peritoneum, but you know that the two layers of peritoneum, they will only fold themselves. So for example, this is one layer. I'm drawing like a 3D image. So back of it you have another layer. So this is a first layer, this is a second layer. Okay, so these two layers, actually what they do is they fold on themselves. So they fold like this. Because of folding, they are now turning into four layers. So first, this is the first layer, this is the second layer. Okay, so you can see here this first layer is now turning into the fourth layer. So I mentioned it wrong. This is the first layer, this is the second layer. Okay, and now we will mention the third and fourth layer. So you see the first layer, it is continuing like this upward, it is folding upward and it is forming fourth layer. This is the second layer which is turning like this and it is forming a third layer, this is third layer. So you can see total four layers, total four layers are formed by two layers. So actually the greater omentum is projecting from the greater curvature of the stomach downward. It looks like it is hanging from the greater curvature of the stomach. Okay, and this greater omentum is forming from two layers only, but these two layers, because of folding, they will form the four layers. So like you can see, this is the first layer, this is the second layer. Okay, the first layer, because of folding, it is forming one more layer, that is fourth layer, and the second layer, because of folding, it is forming one more layer, that is third layer. So total four layers are formed, and these four layers are fused together, and by fusing they form a thin fenestration membrane. So actually this greater omentum will also have some fenestrations in between these four layers. Okay, so they form a thin fenestrated membrane. Okay, which is containing variable quantities of fat. It is also containing some fat, and so for example, let us imagine it in a 3D form. Remove this greater omentum from above. If you layer like, if you remove the greater omentum, inside you will find the intestinal loops like this. Okay, so for example, this is intestinal loop. Above this you are having greater omentum. So if you remove the greater omentum, inside you will find many intestinal loops. Okay, so remember, greater omentum is having four layers. Actually, because of two layers only, because of its folding, it is in turn forming four layers, and these four layers are fused together and they have some fenestrations. And if you remove the greater omentum, if you see inside, you will have the loops of intestine. Okay, so actually, as we discuss about this fourth layer, actually this fourth layer will go around the transverse colon. So let me draw a transverse colon. So this is a cut section of transverse colon, and transverse colon is like, if you remember the hindgut, right, where you have ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, right? Did you remember that? So around the transverse colon, this fourth layer, or you can say the first layer itself, right, the first layer only will fold into fourth layer, right? So this fourth layer is surrounding around the, it is getting fused with the transverse colon. It is like forming a peritoneum for the transverse colon also. And this layer will also cover the transverse mesocolon. What is transverse mesocolon? It's a posterior layer. So for the transverse colon also, there will be a peritoneum on the posterior side, right? On the posterior side, it is called as transverse mesocolon. Okay, on the anterior side, this is a layer from which is coming from this first layer, or you can say fourth layer of the greater omentum. So the transverse mesocolon is covered posteriorly by mesocolon, transverse mesocolon, and anteriorly it is covered by the greater omentum layer. Okay, so now next what happens is, actually between the second and third layer, we see now, let me draw it again. So this is the first layer, this is the second layer, right? So this is the first layer which is only continuing as fourth layer, this is the second layer which is only continuing as third layer. So between the second and third layer, if you see this gap, at the above the greater curvature, this gap is called as lesser sac. It's lesser sac. It is called lesser sac above the greater curvature of stomach, not below it. Okay, above the greater curvature of stomach, it is called lesser sac between second and third layer. Actually, between this 1 and 2 layers of greater momentum, there are like right and left gastroepileptic vessels. Gastroepiploic vessels. So they enter here and the anastomose here between the first layer and second layer, and also there is some amount of fat which is present over here. So now let us understand what is the use of this greater omentum, that is what are the functions of the greater omentum. Okay, so now we are going to discuss what are the functions of greater omentum. Okay, the first function is it is a storehouse of fat. Okay, it is storehouse of fat. And next, it protects our peritoneal cavity against infections like protection. So you can write it's for protection mainly by means of macrophages. So by macrophages it protects infections in peritoneal cavity, and there are like collection of macrophages form dense small patches called as milky spots. So actually milky spots are formed, and this can be seen clearly on the greater omentum with naked eye. So as I said, these are the fenestrations. So like that only there will be some spots like this. These are milky spots. So milky spots are formed by group of macrophages which are present in greater omentum. They act as a protection function against the infections. They can be seen clearly with the naked eye. And also this greater omentum limits the spread of infection by sealing of the surrounding areas. Like where the site of infection, then it will seal that area so that the infection will not spread to other areas. So prevent spread of infection. That is also one of the function of greater omentum. Prevent spread of infection. Okay, and next one is that's why the greater omentum is also called as policeman, the policeman of abdomen. And next one is the greater omentum also forms a partition between the supracholic and infracholic compartments of greater sac. Okay, this is not so important, but remember that it forms a compartment. It's like a partition between the supracholic and infracholic. So you can see this is the greater curvature of the stomach, right? So for example, this is greater curvature of stomach. The greater omentum above it, this is called as supracholic compartment, and this lower one is called as infracholic compartment. That's it. So it is like a partition between supracholic and infracholic compartment. So let me show the real diagram to understand this, and let us summarize everything. So you can see here, this is the stomach and this is the greater omentum which is coming especially from the greater curvature of the stomach. It is descending downwards. It's like you can see thin sheet of greater omentum, but it is made up of two layers, or you can say it is made up of 4 layers. Why 4 layers? Because there's 2 layers only, they will fold and form the 4 layers, right? So if you open this greater omentum and see, you will have the like loops of intestine, and it is also having fat, and you can see it is fenestrated. Okay, and in this diagram you can clearly see the folding which I have explained. So you can see this is the first layer of greater omentum. It is folding to form the 4th layer. And this is the second layer of greater omentum, and it is folding to form 3rd layer, right? So if you see the 4th layer especially, it is going around the transverse colon and covering it. Of course, for the transverse colon, on the posterior side you will have transverse mesocolon. So anterior side it is covered by the 4th layer of greater omentum. And if you see the greater omentum between the layers 2nd and 3rd, it is called as lesser sac. You can see here clearly, lesser sac. Okay, so that's it about greater omentum. You know its functions. So I hope you understood this. If you like my video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe.